Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a cemetery exploration. Now this might not look like it, but we are actually a little bit north of Chicago, Illinois right now. This over here is Lake Michigan, and we are in Evanston, Illinois, and right across the street is Calvary Cemetery. Now there's a lot of interesting people here and a lot of interesting architecture that we're going to go and take a look at. So let's go. Calvary Cemetery, 1859. Now you wouldn't really think because of the location, but this is actually a really historic and interesting cemetery. So we're going to walk around a little bit. I have no real plan for this video, but I want to show you some of the unique stones in here. There's a couple notable people in here. There's some architecture in here and some memorials that are unlike anything I've ever seen in cemeteries. But take a look around here. It's just fascinating, some of the stones and some of the monuments that are in here. Now this is the first one that stands out to me. Reverend Hugh McGuire. Now it's kind of hard to show on video just how large this is, but it says that he was born March 12th, 1846, ordained July 9th, 1871, and he passed away August 13th, 1911. Now this thing is probably 30 feet high. Over here there's something else that's kind of catching my eye a little bit. And by all means, if anybody in the comments knows anything about this cemetery or notices anything that I walk by, please let me know, because I will come back here. There's Michael Lawler. That is fascinating too. And just over here, there's a lot of pretty big mausoleums in here too. Michael Cudahy. Now the main reason I came here today is because there is one particular grave here that I did a video on a couple years back, and I got a lot more questions on that grave site than any I've ever done in my life. And I wanted to come back and show a little bit more of that one. That was kind of the main reason of coming here today. But there's just so much to see here that I couldn't help but doing a longer video. So we'll go and we'll find some more interesting graves here. Harry J. Powers. Now this is a little bit different because if you notice, a lot of these mausoleum doors generally have glass windows. This one is all solid. You don't see that very often. And he's right next to John Fortune. Now when I mean that there is beautiful architecture in this cemetery, here is the O'Connell grave. Now this is a pretty good size memorial, but if you look up at the top, I'll see if I can zoom in a little here. That is just awesome. Here's one that's kind of catching my eye a little bit too. Here's the Hinch tomb. And as I've always said, when you visit cemeteries, please be respectful. Don't leave anything behind, and try as best you can to step over any graves. But this is pretty neat. Put the camera up here so you can see on the inside there. Now I suppose I should probably tell you, being that this is a little bit more slow-paced of a video, why I started doing videos like this, because I've always been fascinated with cemeteries. Every one of them is loaded with history. Every stone is a life, or in some case more than one life. And everybody has done something unique. Everybody's done something different. Everybody, they've raised families. They've had different jobs, different careers, different ways that they have impacted the world. And sometimes the stories are told by their final resting place. And sometimes people can have a gigantic final resting place and you really don't know who they are. It's impossible to look up everybody, but I've always found some strange peace with visiting cemeteries, because you can look up a lot of information online these days. You can find out who these people were. They tell birth and death dates, but they don't tell you who everybody was. This is just kind of a live look at one of the more interesting cemeteries in the Chicago area. Let's see what we have over here. This is George Healy. Born in Massachusetts, 1813. Died in Chicago, Illinois. And then we'll keep wandering along. Now, the grave that I actually wanted to show you is not too far up this path. Now, it goes a little ways over that way. It goes maybe a quarter mile up in front of me. It goes to those buildings off in our distance, and it goes to the street. When you cross it, you get to Lake Michigan. But there are some interesting ones up here that I want to show you. Here is James Edward Gorman and Harriet McGregor Gorman. Now, these giant crosses have always kind of fascinated me. There's a lot of crosses in graveyards, but usually they're not 20, 30, 40 feet tall. This one here is probably about 15 feet, if I had to guess. Now, we mentioned about the mausoleum doors, how they usually have glass. This particular one is the same as the one I showed you a little bit ago. This one also does not have glass, but it does seem to be deteriorating a little bit. This is the Hooley tomb. Now, this one up here, I will tell you, the next one I'm going to show you, the first time I came here, this one scared me. I drove by, it was starting to get kind of dark, and I saw a face in this one, and I thought, I really did not just see that. And it's part of this grave, but it's something that you definitely, when you're driving by slowly, you do not expect to see, especially when it's starting to get to be dark and you're already kind of not weirded out, but when you see certain things in cemeteries, you just don't expect it. But this is the O'Brien gravesite. John O'Brien, Mary, and another John. But if you see this, now tell me, if you drove by this at night, late at night, and you weren't expecting to see it, would it startle you just a tiny bit? I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit weird in that sense, but that scared me that day. That I really did not just see a face in an empty cemetery. There's another one that's pretty interesting. Dever. Now, when I was looking at this earlier, this one intrigues me. I'm not sure who it is, but we'll go and find out together. And then I'll take you to see the one that we came here for. This one is Quinlan. Catherine Quinlan, Raymond, Marianne, and Dennis Quinlan. Very intriguing. And the back of this one says Burns. I'm assuming maybe this is a different burial spot for a different family. I thought maybe those were related, but turns out not. And there's some tall ones. This one over here, if you can see that taller one, it doesn't look very big on camera, but it is massive. Now, this is the one that has gotten me more questions than any other gravesite I've ever visited. This right here is Joseph Lyon. Now, he was a small boy, passed away at 9 years old. There was a lot of, a lot of people that didn't seem to know what exactly happened to him. It's not very well documented. Back in the day, the Chicago fire wiped out a lot of public records, so there's a lot of people here that we really don't know what happened to. But this is Joseph Lyon, otherwise known as Josie, and he passed away December 4th of 1891, I believe it was. It's kind of hard to read that, but he was 9 years old, and he was a very loved boy, and he grew up in a pretty rich household. His father was George, his mother was Catherine. Now, Catherine passed away in 1912. This is her right here. And his father passed away 1922, 1847 to 1922, George W. Lyon. Now, George Lyon was a manufacturer of musical instruments. If you've ever heard of Lyon and Healy harps, he was the co-founder of that. It was a very big musical instruments company from the Chicago area. But this is the statue that they commissioned to have to honor their boy. Now, there's something a little haunting about this, but also very beautiful. It looks like this hasn't really been cleaned on the inside in a long time. There's spider webs and all that. But let me know if have you ever seen anything quite like this? I mean, I have not. It's a very unique design, and it's built specifically to house the statue of little Josie. Now, a lot of people said that it's beautiful. Some people said it's creepy. There's some people said that this location is haunted. I can't personally vouch for that. Every time I've come here, I've never felt anything other than peace while being around this grave here. But it was one of the more fascinating ones that we covered here in this location. Now we're moving right along. Here is the Brennan tomb. And the door on this one almost looks like that of a public restroom. It's a little different than the doors that you usually see on these kind of tombs. Then here's another O'Brien memorial. There's quite a few O'Briens in here. This one says Mother, erected by the family, 1889. This one is still in fantastic shape. Now, if you have not seen my Mount Carmel Cemetery videos from Chicago, the famous gangster graves, there's a lot of the graves there, or tombs, that look just like this. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend going back and looking there. That's a really interesting cemetery too. And I will go back there again, probably sometime this year, and show you a little more of it. Some of these places you never get enough time to fully explore everything that you'd like to. Joseph B. Galley. But this is a pretty big, let me see if I can show you just how massive this is, just for comparison's sake. Over here we have Michael Cooney. It says memorial to my wife Catherine. Beautiful tomb. It looks like it's boarded up. Now there are some more interesting people here, and one of them is all the way across the cemetery over there. That would be Charles Comiskey. I will take you over there in just a minute and we'll go look at his. Now we have to go back to this one because this ended up being somebody that did not initially click with me. This is one of the downsides of not doing research before visiting. We came here and we were going to do a little walk together, and I really didn't look up a whole lot of information. But this one that I showed you earlier, George Healy, the name sounded kind of familiar, and I had to go back and do a double take. Now, this is actually the famous painter, George Healy, and if his name does not ring a bell to you, he actually was commissioned to do a lot of the official presidential portraits. He did everybody, I believe, from John Quincy Adams to Ulysses S. Grant, the official presidential portraits. Now, he did a lot of other painting and everything else too, but he was actually a really influential artist. But I should have known that, and I feel a little embarrassed that it didn't click at the moment. But now that we knew that, I had to bring you back to come back and take another look. So off to the front we go. Now we're heading up by the road, and I'm going to show you a notable grave. But this one right here kind of stood out to me. It's a very different size and style than ones I've seen before. It's almost like a mausoleum with no bottom, but this is labeled Peter Smith, 1893. It looks like there's kind of a spot right there. Maybe that's where they put the casket. It's a little bit different of a design than what I've seen before. But like I said before, if you guys like cemetery tours and videos like this, let me know and I'll try to do more of them in this style. Next time I will look things up a little bit more. I have a feeling I might have missed one or two things in here. But just up here is one more that I want to show you. And this is right off the road. But if you're a baseball fan, this is Charles Comiskey up here. He was a owner of the Chicago White Sox. He owned them during the famous Black Sox scandal. And it's kind of strange too, because right on the other side of this is a road, and there's a walking path here, and there's a million people walking on this path. But this is Charles Comiskey. Owned the Chicago White Sox and, the Black Sox back then. But he was the namesake of Comiskey Park, where the Chicago White Sox played for a lot of years. But just a really interesting one. This mausoleum's right up by the street. And if you can see in here, he is on this side, right up there. Hopefully you can see that. But Charles Comiskey, I'm pretty sure he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame too. But a notorious guy because back in the day he was known to be really, really cheap. Didn't want to give his players bonuses, and that was kind of the main reason why a lot of those guys decided to throw the World Series. A lot of people will still debate as to who threw the games and who didn't. We'll probably never know. But this is Calvary Cemetery in Evanston, Illinois, and I highly recommend a visit if you enjoy cemeteries. It's a very peaceful place. There's a lot of history here, and it's just a great place to come and get some exercise and take in a little bit of history. But thanks for joining today, and we'll catch you next time. Have a great day.